My family used me and betrayed me. They sold my house, stole all my savings. And that was just the beginning. My whole life, I financially supported my family and loved them more than anything. But they destroyed my life. I was sitting at the dinner table in my parents' house in the suburbs of Seattle, where the smell of roasted turkey and mashed potatoes mixed with the tension I'd learned to push down. Family dinners were a tradition, a ritual I honored, even with years of little jabs, subtle digs, and endless requests to help out. My sister Emily was scrolling through her phone, her fingers flicking across the screen so fast it was annoying, like she was trying to escape reality. Her husband Travis was sipping a beer, slouched in his chair with a lazy smirk. Mom was bustling around with plates, her movements sharp, like she was trying to drown out something inside her. Dad, as usual, had his nose buried in the newspaper, his silence louder than any words. I caught Emily exchanging a look with Travis when I asked about their Christmas plans. Her smile was tight, like a string about to snap. "Oh, we haven't decided yet," she said, looking away. Travis mumbled something about life changes, staring off to the side. My stomach twisted, but I brushed it off. That was my first mistake. After dessert, as Mom cleared the dishes and I sipped bitter coffee, Emily dropped a bombshell so casually it tore through the night like lightning. "We sold your house, Jake." My hand shook, coffee splashing onto the table. "What?" My voice came out hoarse, like someone was choking me. She shrugged, her eyes cold, almost mocking. "You're single. An apartment's enough for you. We needed the money more." Anger boiled inside me, but I couldn't move. I opened my banking app on my phone, my fingers trembling so bad I missed the screen twice. Balance: $127.43. Just yesterday, it was $89,000. Everything I'd saved over years of skipping vacations, working overtime, living like a monk. My house. Mine. The one I bought at 28, pouring every penny I had into it. The one where I dreamed of a future, a family, kids, a life I never got. They sold it, without my knowledge, forging my signature. Mom stared at the floor, her hands nervously twisting her apron like she could wipe away the truth. Dad turned a page in his newspaper, his silence hitting me like a punch to the back. Travis smirked, his eyes glinting like a predator who'd caught his prey. Emily added, her voice sharp as a blade, "Don't make a big deal out of it, Jake. We're family. Family." That word burned me like hot iron. I stood up, blood pounding in my temples, my heart hammering like it might burst out of my chest. I grabbed my jacket, my movements jerky, almost out of control. "You're leaving already?" Mom looked up, her voice dripping with fake surprise. "Yeah," I snapped, zipping my jacket like I was slamming the door on their world. "Don't worry, we'll see each other again." Emily scoffed, her laugh like poison. "He's always so dramatic." I opened the door, and the cold air hit my face. "Then you're not gonna like what comes next," I said, not looking back. Their laughter faded behind me, but I could already hear the sound of a car pulling up outside. I knew this was just the beginning. I drove through the rainy Seattle night, my headlights catching the wet asphalt while the rain drummed on my windshield, relentless like my thoughts. Anger and pain churned in my chest, squeezing my lungs. I tried to wrap my head around how my family could do this. They didn't just sell my house, they stole my life, my work, my dreams, my years spent alone, building something for myself. I thought back to how I'd always been their fixer. I paid for Travis's car repairs when he lost his job, though I later found out he just quit to live for himself. I covered Emily's electric bills when she forgot to pay, even though her Instagram was full of photos from fancy restaurants and boutiques. I bought gifts for their daughter Lily, tablets, clothes, toys, because they couldn't afford it. Every time I offered a hand, they took it without a second thought. And every time, Mom would say, "You're strong, Jake. God gave you success so you could share it." Dad would nod. Family means sacrifice. But where were their sacrifices? When I lost my job in 2020 and lived on canned food and cheap bread for 2 months, no one offered to help. When I skipped vacations to rebuild my savings, no one said, "Thank you." When I bailed out Emily and Travis's credit card debt 2 years ago, they didn't even mention it. I was their ATM, not their brother, not their son. I was a tool. I pulled up to my house, or what was left of it. A sold sign stood on the lawn, its white surface gleaming in the rain like a mockery. I tried the door. My key didn't work. They'd changed the locks. My stuff, books, old vinyl records, photos from graduation, was inside. Or maybe it wasn't. I didn't know. I stood there in the rain, water dripping down my face, mixing with something hot and salty. Tears? Anger? I couldn't tell. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car, parked by an abandoned warehouse, scrolling through my banking app. The balance hadn't changed, $127.43. I replayed every moment in my head, trying to figure out how I'd been so blind. Emily once joked about getting access to my old laptop, which I'd left at my parents' house. Travis asked if I wanted to simplify family finances by combining accounts. I brushed it off. I trusted them, and this was the result. I remembered Mom once saying, "You're not like Emily. She's got struggles, but you always manage." That was their excuse. I'd manage. I always did. But now I realized they didn't just take, they planned. And that thought cut deeper than the betrayal. This was a war I hadn't seen coming. The next day, I went to the bank. The office in downtown Seattle was cold, sterile, like my emotions. The manager, an older woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Margaret, listened to my story, her face growing darker. She confirmed the worst. My signature was on the house sale documents, forged but expertly done. Someone had used my info to close the deal. I asked who. She shook her head. Confidential. But I knew. It was Emily, or Travis, or both. I left the bank, anger giving way to cold determination. I couldn't just sit there. That night I called Mike, an old college friend who was now a private investigator. We hadn't talked in years, but he was the kind of guy who didn't ask too many questions. "Give me a couple days," he said after hearing my story. His voice was calm, but I could tell he was as pissed as I was. While Mike dug, I started piecing things together myself. I remembered little things I'd ignored, like how Emily once asked me to check her taxes on my laptop because hers broke. How Travis always asked about my finances, tossing out questions like, "You still investing, right?" I was blind, or I didn't want to see. 3 days later, Mike called. "You're not going to believe what I found," he said, his voice a mix of shock and worry. We met at a greasy diner on the edge of town, where the smell of burnt oil mixed with cigarette smoke. He tossed a folder of printouts onto the table. Turns out Emily and Travis didn't just sell my house. They took out a $200,000 loan in my name, using the house as collateral, and funneled the money to an offshore account. But that wasn't the whole story. Mike found emails between Travis and a partner who helped pull it off. The partner's name hit me like a brick. It was my dad. I sat there, staring at the printouts as my coffee went cold. Emails, bank transfers, forged documents with my signature. My father, the man who taught me to be a man, was in on it. He didn't just know, he planned it. In one email, he wrote to Travis, "Jake won't notice. He's too busy with work." My hands shook, the folder nearly slipping off the table. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an attack. I felt something inside me break, the last thread tying me to my family. I asked Mike what else he found. He frowned. "There's something weird. Some of the money went to an account that's not tied to Emily or Travis. I don't know whose it is yet. But that's not all. They tried to take out another loan in your name. If you hadn't caught this, you'd be on the hook for $500,000. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Blood pounded in my ears, and my throat felt tight. This wasn't just a scam. It was an attempt to ruin me, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. Before confronting my family, I decided to visit my late Aunt Ruth's old house. She passed away 3 years ago, but she was the only one who ever saw the real me. "Jake," she'd say, her voice warm but firm, "don't let them use your kindness. You deserve better." Her house in the Tacoma suburbs sat empty, but I still had the key. Inside, it smelled of dust and memories, old books, lavender, her favorite tea. I wandered through the rooms, the past coming alive. On the mantel was a photo album. I opened it, and my heart clenched. Me, Emily, our parents, back before everything went wrong. In one picture, Emily and I were building a snow fort. She was 10, I was 12. She looked at me like I was her hero. Somewhere along the way, that vanished, swallowed by her greed and my silence. I remembered Aunt Ruth warning me about my family. "They'll keep taking until you say enough," she'd said, looking me in the eye. I didn't listen. I thought love meant giving. Now I understood. Love means boundaries, and I hadn't set any. In her desk, I found a letter addressed to me. "Jake," she wrote, her handwriting neat but shaky. "If you're reading this, you've finally seen them for who they are. Don't blame yourself. You're stronger than you know. Walk away if you have to. Start over." Tucked in the envelope was a check for $10,000. She'd left it for me, for when I was ready to start over. I clutched the letter, tears burning my eyes. She knew. She always knew. I sat on her old couch where we used to drink tea and talk about life. Memories flooded back. How she taught me to make her famous apple pie. How she laughed when I spilled flour all over the floor. How she hugged me when I told her I lost my job and said, "You'll get through this, Jake. You always do." Her words felt like a prophecy now. That visit gave me resolve. I didn't just want my life back. I wanted the truth. I wanted them to feel what it's like to lose everything, and I was ready to fight, even if it meant losing them forever. A week later, Mom called. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but I could hear the fakeness. "We need to talk, Jake. Family dinner. Just us." I agreed, though I knew it was a trap. Part of me wanted to see their faces when I laid my cards on the table. Part of me hoped for a hint of an apology, but deep down, I knew. They wouldn't apologize. They never did. When I walked into the house, it was like that night, all over again. Mom was clattering dishes, her movements nervous like she was afraid of the silence. Dad was flipping through his newspaper, his fingers gripping the pages so hard, they crumpled. Emily sat with her arms crossed, her eyes cold but flickering with unease. Travis sipped his beer, his smirk forced, like a mask. I sat down, placing the folder of evidence on the table. It sat there like a grenade, with the pin pulled. No one asked what it was. They knew. Mom spoke first, her voice shaky but laced with that familiar manipulative tone. "They were in debt," she explained. "The house they sold was their only shot." Emily chimed in, saying I was always selfish for not wanting to help. Her words cut like a knife, but I didn't let her see my pain. Travis nodded, muttering something about family values, but his eyes darted like a cornered animal. Dad stayed silent, but his silence screamed louder than anything. I opened the folder. The printouts hit the table like a verdict. Transfers, signatures, emails. Their faces changed. Emily went pale, her hands trembling as she gripped the table like she might fall. Travis squeezed his beer bottle so hard it cracked. Dad finally put down his newspaper, but he wouldn't look at me. His face was stone, but I saw his lips quiver. I told them I'd gone to the police. Emily jumped up, her voice breaking into a scream. She accused me of betraying the family, her eyes blazing with rage and fear. Mom started crying, her tears loud and theatrical. But I felt no pity. Dad finally spoke. "You've always been too sensitive." His voice was cold as ice, but I saw him clench his fists. Then there was a knock at the door, heavy, confident, like the hammer of fate. I got up and opened it. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, followed by a man in plain clothes with a folder. "Financial Crimes Unit," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "Jacob Wilson?" I nodded, adrenaline surging through my veins. "Thank you for your cooperation." Emily collapsed into a chair, her face white as chalk. She was whispering something incoherent, her eyes darting around like she was looking for an escape. Travis tried to speak, but the agent cut him off with a sharp gesture. Mom covered her face, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Dad stared at the floor, his hands trembling like an old man's. I walked outside, not looking back. Behind me, I heard Emily's screams, Mom's crying, Travis's low voice trying to explain something. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt. I felt freedom, fragile, but real. The cold Seattle air burned my lungs, and I breathed deeper, like it was my first breath in years. A few days later, I got a text from Kevin, Travis's younger brother. We were never close, just a few words at family gatherings, nothing more. But his message was short and direct. "You were right. They went too far. I can help." I read it 3 times, hope wrestling with distrust. We met in a park on the edge of town. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, like my thoughts. Kevin looked tired, his eyes darting like he thought someone was watching. He said he knew about the plan. Travis had bragged about how easily they played me. Kevin didn't take part, but he heard enough. He was sick of their manipulations, of how Travis and Emily used everyone, including him. He handed me recordings of Travis talking to Dad about splitting the money. In one, Travis laughed. "Jake won't notice until it's too late." I gripped my phone so hard the screen cracked. Anger flared like a wildfire, but I forced myself to breathe. Kevin added something else. Emily was trying to pin it on me, claiming I approved the deal. She'd faked an email from my account and sent it to her lawyer. I looked at Kevin, trying to figure out why he was doing this. He shrugged, his voice quiet but firm. "I always thought you were weak because you stayed quiet. Now I see you're stronger than all of us." Those words stuck in me like a splinter. For the first time, someone in the family saw me as more than a wallet. I felt something warm stir in my chest, not forgiveness, but relief. I gave the recordings to Mike, who sent them to the police. I also filed for a restraining order. No more family dinners. No more calls to bail them out. I was ready to burn that bridge to ashes, even if the embers scorched my heart. While the police worked, Mike dug up another detail that turned everything upside down. The offshore account the money went to was linked to a David Crow, someone I'd never heard of. Mike found out he wasn't just some random crook. Crow was an old friend of my dad's, a shady businessman who vanished after a tax scandal years ago. Mike showed me documents. Some of the money from my house went to Crow's account, but not for family needs. He and Dad were investing in an illegal scheme, trading fake startup stocks. Travis and Emily were just pawns in their game, thinking they were getting their money, while Crow and Dad used them to cover their tracks. I sat in Mike's car, flipping through the documents, feeling the world crumble again. My father, the man who taught me about honesty, wasn't just complicit. He was the mastermind. I realized his silence when Emily or Travis asked for money wasn't weakness. It was strategy. His silence wasn't passive. It was calculated. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of rage. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, praising my school awards, saying, "You're my son, Jake. I'm proud of you." It was all a lie. He didn't see me as a son. He saw me as a tool. I called Mike and said, "Dig deeper. I want to know everything." He warned me it could be dangerous. Crow wasn't just a crook. He had connections, maybe even criminal ones. But I couldn't stop. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was a war for my life. Fear and resolve battled inside me, but resolve won. I wasn't backing down. Before the case went to court, I got a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. or you'll regret it, it read. My stomach dropped, but I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Mike. He frowned when we met. This isn't just a threat, he said. Crow knows you're close. I started noticing weird things. A car parked too long outside my temporary place. Calls from unknown numbers that hung up when I answered. One night I came home to find my door slightly open. Nothing was missing, but a photo was on the table. An old one from a family picnic. My face was circled in red marker. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the lights on, gripping a baseball bat I found in the closet. Fear was new. I was used to anger, to pain, but fear. It was sticky, cold, like Seattle rain, but it also pushed me. If they thought they could scare me off, they were wrong. I called my lawyer and told him to speed things up. This is bigger than fraud, I said. It's an organized scheme. He nodded, his eyes serious. Be careful, Jake. People like this don't go down without a fight. I started carrying a recorder, double-checking my locks, avoiding dark alleys. My life felt like a thriller, but I couldn't stop. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, but stepping back wasn't an option. The next few weeks were chaos. The police called Emily and Travis in for questioning. Dad, too. Mom called every day, leaving voicemails full of tears and manipulation. Jake, you're tearing the family apart, she whispered. We can fix this. I didn't answer. I was busy, meeting with my lawyer, gathering more evidence, preparing for court. Mike found another piece of the puzzle. Some of the money from my house didn't just go to the offshore account. Travis invested part of it in that fake startup, which crashed. They lost everything. The irony was almost poetic. They stole my life to fuel their greed and ended up with nothing. One evening I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a note from Kevin. I left the family, he wrote. You showed me it's okay to say no. Thank you. Tucked in the envelope was a check for $5,000, his attempt to repay some of what Travis stole. I didn't cash it, not out of pride, but because I was done with their money. But Kevin's note warmed me. Someone got it. Someone saw me. Mike called the next day. He'd tracked Crow to Mexico, and the police were working with Interpol. My dad was under investigation, not just for theft, but for ties to organized crime. That was a twist I didn't see coming. My family didn't just betray me. They dragged me into their criminal world. The ground felt like it was slipping out from under me, but at the same time, I felt a strange relief. The truth was on my side. 3 months later, Emily called from an unknown number. Her voice was weak, broken, like cracked glass. She said everything had fallen apart. Travis left her. Their accounts were frozen, and Mom and Dad were on the verge of divorce. She begged me to drop the case. We didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her tears sounding almost real. But I remembered her laughing when I checked my account, how Mom looked away, how Dad stayed silent. You made your choice, I said, my voice cold as steel. Now live with it. I hung up before she could reply. In that moment, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just empty. They were my family, but they chose themselves, and I chose myself. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at Portland's lights. The wind was cold, but I felt warmth inside. I was free, not from them, but from their expectations, their manipulations, their lies. I was free to be me. 6 months passed. I thought I'd closed that chapter, but the past has a way of creeping back. One morning, I got a letter from Mom. A real one, paper, with her neat handwriting. She wrote that everything went wrong, that they didn't mean to lose me, that she missed our Jake, but not a word about an apology, not a word about what they did. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the waterfront, sat on a bench, and watched the water. I thought of Aunt Ruth, her words, her letter. I pulled out the check she'd left me and decided to use it, not for myself, but for something bigger. I donated the $10,000 to a homeless shelter in Tacoma. It was my way of saying thank you to Aunt Ruth, and my way of closing that chapter. I'm no longer their son, their brother, their fixer. I'm a man who chose himself, and that's enough. One night, months after moving to Portland, I woke up to a strange sound, a scraping at my front door. I froze, my heart pounding. I got up quietly, grabbing the baseball bat I kept by my bed since those threats. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped into the doorway. "Jake?" The voice was familiar but shaky. It was Emily. Her face was pale, her hair a mess, her eyes red from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "I need to talk," she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't lower the bat. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice cold as the night outside. She flinched but stepped closer. I hired someone. Please, Jake, just listen." She said everything had collapsed. Travis left her with their debts. Dad was awaiting trial, and Mom stopped talking to her. She begged me to drop the case, promised to pay me back, swore she'd change. But her words were hollow. I saw it in her eyes. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted getting caught. "You think I'll believe you?" I said, anger creeping back. "You stole my life, Emily. You, Travis, Dad. All of you." She started crying, but her tears were like the rain outside, cold and useless. I called the police. When they arrived, she was still standing in the doorway, pleading. I watched them take her away and felt nothing but emptiness. She was my sister. But now she was a stranger. Now I live for myself. My home isn't walls that can be sold. It's the peace I found when I stopped being their fixer. I don't regret it. Not the police, not the lawsuit, not walking away. My therapist once asked why I put up with it for so long. I thought love meant always saying, "Yes," I said. She smiled. "Love is teaching others to respect your no." I'll never forget that. I don't know what's next for Emily, Travis, or my parents. Their names pop up in the news sometimes. The fraud case made it to court. Dad might go to prison. Crow's still on the run. But I don't follow it. I'm not their wallet anymore. Not their backup plan. I'm Jake. And that's enough. I started running in the mornings along the Willamette River. Every sunrise, I feel lighter. I cook dinners, listen to old albums, hang out with friends who don't ask for money. I'm living. And that's more than they ever gave me. One day, I got a letter from Sarah, an old high school friend. "You inspired me," she wrote. I said no to my family too. "Thank you," I smiled, feeling something warm spread in my chest. I'm not alone. And that feeling, it's the best thing I've got. So what's your relationship with your family like? Share your story in the comments. Let's support each other.